What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. This is my official review for the Squarp Instruments Hapax, to which they provided me a review copy, even though they don't know what I'm going to be saying within this video, and I'm not sponsored. To which, thank you so much to them for sending me this. It's really cool that you all were willing to take a chance on me, and I will say that this review, while honest, just off the bat, like, it's awesome. This is a really great piece of hardware, and I reached out to them because I knew that it was going to be something that I was going to like, especially with being such a big fan of the Alckemy 1 sequencer, which we will have a comparison video on in the future. This is a polychronic performance sequencer, and one of the major differences between something like the Alckemy 1 is, for one, there's two screens. Two, this is, while 32 tracks across two different projects that you can have separate, all of these are polyphonic. And so rather than having 32 tracks that you would use for, say, like a drum sequencer or something, to which this does have a drum mode, which is pretty sick, this is more so of a means of 16 complete sequencers that can all have different modes, different scales, all different kinds of stuff that is super cool. So before I go any further within this review, because I'm not going to be covering everything, if this seems interesting, subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. Check out alckemy.com if you want to support the channel. All right. My favorite features, for one, scale mode. Nothing is playing. Let's try that one more time. Let me go into here. I'm on the wrong sequencer. It's kind of a weird line, but yeah, I actually love this. And typically in the past I would just use my QWERTY keyboard, and so having all of this at my fingertips within scales and whatnot is just, you got to try it. If you don't even have this, like, you know, try a Launch Novation or something to where you just have access to really quick scales and whatnot to be able to play and to have something physical to work with, even if it's not quite a piano. I'm not a pianist, or I would even say a musician per se, but that's just something that I think this has been the best experience that I've had with playing the scales and the buttons and the feel. And overall, that's kind of the big picture, aside from the two screens, which this has a timeline, by the way, which is, or a piano roll, which is absolutely nuts. This feels the best to play. And because there's pretty much a button for everything, figuring most things out from a basic standpoint of how do I get this thing to play notes, how do I get this thing to actually work, was very easy to figure out. You know, oh, now I'm on sequence 3. Wait, if I hold sequence 1, that goes into my MIDI options. If I hold sequence 2, there's all of this stuff. You do have some crazy things within this, though. It's not to say that it's not powerful. For example, you've got your timeline modes on here to where you can set it up for, for a fugue machine if you want to, across multiple sequences. You have your generative things over here, which, while I would like to see some more algorithms or some more in-depth controls in the future, these are all still pretty great. Shuffle being my favorite. This will take a collection of notes. You go apply, shuffles the notes. Pretty dope. But like I was talking about before, the general workflow between this, like, you can highlight all of these and you can transpose everything, change the octave, or change the length, change the micro timing, which this is probably the most important feature for me, but more on that in a bit. There's chance, there's roll, there's conditions. If you don't want this to play the same thing every time, you've got a fill button. So let's say I want to have something to where I'm like performing and I'm like, I want to have this little accent on the second go around. Well, instead of doing that there, I can hold the fill button and go, and now you see how these are kind of like more, I would say, like pastel-like. Maybe not, because we're on a screen. You can still see that this is shifting here, and so whenever I hold fill, everything becomes pastel, and when I take the fill button off, this becomes pastel. Sorry you can't see that because of the contrast of the camera and whatnot, but I want to make sure that you can see the screen, so forgive me on that. But still, that's really cool. The other thing is that there's a snapshot mode. So let's say I'm working and I'm like, oh, this stuff is really cool. I really like all of this. I want to keep this, but I don't necessarily want to save it. I can push the snapshot button, and now you'll see that that'll turn green. And any changes that I make, maybe let's get a bell in here. And I'm like, oh, that was cool, but I want to go back. Snapshot mode. So sick. Very easy. Let's say I want to copy stuff. I can go here, copy, paste, We can go to the patterns to where there's up to 32 patterns with different play modes for one, perform, song, loop song, which I don't really use this stuff, but it's still nice to have as a means of organization and whatnot that you can kind of push over here and put into your song mode. I can copy the patterns. I can do that and or make changes to it or whatever. And so building off of the sequences and whatnot can give you quite a bit to work with, which is great. There's automation mode, which I have never seen this in any other sequencer before. I think that the Mark II has something like this, even though it's called something different. But let's say you want to change the pitch bend on this. Well, now look, you can actually draw in automation on here, which is crazy. If you want to get more in depth, I do believe, yeah, you can go in here and create more refined tunings on this to be able to change this. But look how crazy that is. And it doesn't have to be with pitch or whatever, but it's pretty sick. You can hold all and delete. And that's probably another one of the biggest things about this is just that the workflow in between getting notes in here and changing stuff is so nice within all of this. So for example, if I want to select a track, I can do that. Or sorry, select a lane. I think that's the better way to say that. And I'm like, you know what? I want everything in this lane to be a little bit late. Well, I can do that. Or I can make it early or whatever. We're going to be talking more about the wish list that I want to see from this just because it's already like present in the future. But stay tuned toward the end of the video for that kind of thing. So one of my other favorite features is the chord match. And so we have a global scale and you can see, sorry, match chord. And what this means is that if I'm playing a sequence and I'm on track 16 in scale mode, then while this is playing, I can hit another note and it'll automatically transpose this into whatever it is that I'm playing on the scale mode. That's freaking awesome because it automatically makes your sequences that you have on here way more dynamic, right? And so because of that, just because you have this sequencer, you don't actually have to hold this and go transpose and transpose. You can play it like it's a melody. And that's, yeah, that's pretty awesome, actually. That's something that I also have not seen before. I know that the Mark II, like I said before, has some other performance stuff, but I haven't even began to open that yet, so I can't really speak on the matter. But this is the first time that I've seen it, which keep in mind that this came out, I think in like 2022, I want to say. So it's several... yeah, at least a few years old by now. And the updates and stuff that come out have been pretty regular, to which the most recent thing is being able to import drum patterns, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. So yeah, generally speaking, getting stuff in here has been the easiest to kind of program, I think, and to change and to modify. You know, being able to select a lane and change all this stuff, or being able to select everything and change or delete and whatnot. Like the moment-to-moment functionality, in my experience, has been the best on the Hapax. That being said, some of the other cool things that this offers are different interesting effects, to which it's kind of strange because they're labeled as effects, to which you can have 8, technically kind of 7, because the first one is always matrix. Things like mono or chance or like random, things like the scale modify, to which this actually has a really important feature. So for example, if we're using something really cool like the shaper, let's say I hit play. This is awesome. You can see that while it's kind of tilting the notes, or basically becoming a note filter to some extent, you can use something like the scaler to map everything back into the host or a completely different thing, which is kind of nice. So and it's just a great way to like modify your sequence using the same rhythm without having to necessarily print it. There is a Euclidean sequencer built in, to which I do think that this is awesome. I wish that there was control of groove and humanize and all that stuff without there actually being a groove and humanize effect on here, to which I would like to see more options within that, but it's nice that it exists, right? And that will kind of get us into the biggest thing that I have with this. Some of these other effects are great as well, but you can check out my video of the first impressions for me checking all these other things out. my biggest thing with this that I would like to see is time divisions, because while you do have the elasticity with the BPM to where you can make it either half of down all the way down to half of, say, 85.9 BPM or 200% of 85 BPM, the actual playhead as a main division would be nice to have because it goes in terms of resolution. And you can zoom in and out of this. So let's say like I just want to put a note on every fourth and I want to micro time that, right? So we'll go back into step mode. The micro timing, which is probably my biggest gripe of this, jumps or doesn't scale in the way that I would want it to. Because if we get really fine with this, whenever I start to do something here, it will push this 2% now. And I would like it to stay at 1% and change based off of how far I'm zooming in, which is basically just being able to change that at a finer resolution. And I've spoken to the representatives about that, and they said that theirs is, I think, the most accurate of any of the sequencers. But even still, it would be nice to, instead of change the micro timing at 2%, even just 1% would, I think, make a big difference for me, because I make very off-kilter beats and stuff that require very specific timings and matching, or else the whole groove is thrown off. To which, it would also be cool if there were things like groove pulls, right? Especially in the drum mode here. Like, let's say I go into the steps, then we go into the drum mode, which this is awesome, by the way. You can basically change this into an 8-lane sequencer that, I don't have any drums on here right now, but this will play drums, and you can label these of what this is supposed to be, and then you can actually change the pitch of these in case if you want to transpose them. So let's say I'm playing a, out note of this, I can change this to a different note, and then we can use that either as changing the different sample or the pitches and all that other stuff. It's very nice. I love that there is an actual drum mode on here, and to which one of the latest features is if we hit second and this, you can actually import and export things like either instrument definitions or MIDI files that you can just upload a drum thing in here. I am curious because I haven't experimented before, but I do want to try to make some of my really fine timing drum patterns and see how that compares to when I put this in and see if it matches it. Just out of curiosity, because I don't really know what would happen, but that is really cool. So with that, within this sequencer, we can go back into the step mode and go back into poly. And if you notice, this actually maintains all of the steps that this has. So if you're switching back and forth, to which I would just say use a different sequencer, right? But it's still kind of nice that I didn't lose my progress and I don't have to reset everything to go back and forth or whatever. But yeah, even though the time division thing and the micro timing and stuff, I think could have a better, maybe not resolution is the word, but just finer control, we'll say that. There is something that you can do on here, which is called warping. So if you hold all and you hold plus or minus, you can actually push this stuff to be later or earlier, which is kind of cool. The one thing that I wish though is rather than wrap and make it go back into itself, it would be cool if this pushed the length of this instead and made the whole sequence longer as opposed to starting to fold into itself. Because if I fold it and then I start to go back, it doesn't return. It starts to push everything. It starts to squash everything. And so I'd much rather have it to be where it's even or the same of if I push it out, it's not going to overlap. If I push it in, it's not going to overlap either. Or if I push it out and it overlaps, then if I push it back in, it'll, undo lap? I don't know how you would describe that. But that's kind of a strange quirk that I would like to see adjusted. Time division would fix all of that. Being able to set the playhead at 1/4 versus 1/8. You can, in theory, do that, but you see now the steps that you have available on here instead, like this is still playing at 1/16. It's just not showing all of the notes that are on here, if that makes sense. I would rather have this be zoomed in, kind of like this, and have the same amount of steps available, but it's going boom, 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 or twice the speed or whatever. Other than that, that's like the only one thing that I'm like, okay, this should exist. So yeah, aside from that, what's also really cool is that, like I said before, you have your different playhead modes to where you can create a fugue machine. So this can go forward, backward, and whatever. And this is kind of nice because if I like the notes that I have, but I don't want to necessarily change them, or I want to change them, but I don't want to like print it, then I can set this on random and just hit play. Which is awesome. That's one of my favorite things. I would actually like to see more modes on this though, because I think that whenever you're playing this on random bar, it only jumps, it might jump to a different position, but it's never going to connect backwards. So I would like it to see it maybe do a little bit more of this, of how it jumps. And then also there's random bar, random beat, random 16th. But it would be cool if there was an eighth or another time division on here based off of where the playhead goes. To which I think that having just the other option here to where it says run, maybe change the name to direction and then have this set as run and then just have your division here to where it's like, okay, this is still in 16th notes, but it's only playing at whatever division we have. And the main reason why with the elasticity thing and all that is because maybe I don't want to have something that falls within the realm of 50% elasticity to 200% elasticity. Maybe I want more, maybe I want less, maybe I want triplets. I guess I could do 75%, but you know what I'm saying? It would just be nicer to be able to have that control to say where I want that to go. But yeah, so all in all, I think that this thing is really cool. And there are some great features that I haven't necessarily even talked over yet that you can check out the other video that I go over. But the main thing with this for me is that the editing on here, programming, getting cool and inspiring sounds or cool and inspiring notes or melodies, harmonies, whatever, is just as easy as the other instruments, but it also offers different effects that make it stand out on its own. When it comes into the moment to moment, with the resolutions of the screens and the size of the pads, the ability to edit stuff all together like this with the track lanes and all that, this is, yeah, like this is set up to be, you know, it's set up for success. Let's just say that. With that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the feature list that I have now, because I think that even if some of these were implemented, it would significantly improve the value for me if I were to buy one of these. But again, I kind of want to stress like, hey, these aren't complaints. These are just like features that could be really applied to any sequencer. So we'll get into that. First off, I talked about the divisions. We are going to kind of gloss over that. But yeah, I talked about the custom scales. I talked about the micro timing stuff. In the drum mode, there's something that would be really cool to have, which it's kind of already there, but you have this 16 velocities. It would be cool if this was also maybe like pitch or chance or something of the sort that could be added maybe with a page or something of the sort if this doesn't exist. Even though I don't know everything about the Hapax, I'm pretty sure that that's not a thing. That would be pretty awesome to be able to kind of flip through that. Within that, the effects would be kind of cool to have a modification to. So the shaper is probably my favorite effect that's in here. If there was a shaper EX to where you just have 4 points and you can pull them up and down and maybe have a curve control or something or a bend, that would be awesome because you can essentially have like a really robust, what would we call it? Key filter, pitch filter, or something of the sort. This in itself is already great, but maybe if there was a third toggle here and then we had some controls over the right of like 4 points to where we can kind of move it up and down, I think that would be super awesome. We talked about the chord suggestions and custom scales. Note choking between sequencers would also be pretty dope. So let's say I'm out of this again. Let me hold this and we're back in poly mode. Let's say both of these are playing and they're in the same scale, right? Or let's say this is an octave higher. I think that would be a little bit more, make a little bit more sense. We're still in drum mode here. We need to go to poly. So within these, imagine they're on the same MIDI channel, but they're an octave higher, or they are playing the same note, but they're across different MIDI channels. It would be really cool if there was a note choke on here to where if I'm playing multiple instruments at once, they're not going to overlap. It's going to play one or the other. We can either set the master to be, you know, sequencer 1 or 2 or, you know, anything of the sort, kind of like a drum rack. But if I have multiple things that are going at once, it'll basically help you create, you know, a more cohesive harmony line between the instruments to where that overlap wouldn't be there. That would be freaking sick. I think that's a huge thing that a lot of people that compose and all that stuff could probably use. In regards to the echo effect, it would be pretty cool if, because it's already kind of there, we have the gate curve. And what I would like to see within the gate curve are exponential rhythms within this, or basically creating a note bounce, right? So where instead of it just going do, 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 like that, you can have it go from fast to slow. I did try to see if I can set this up with the LFO. I haven't been able to do it successfully, but if it was just an effect in here, I think that it would be a lot easier to use in general anyways. Speaking of, if you hit second and you go to effects, you actually have two LFOs. There is random on here. It would be cool if there was a smooth random, maybe not necessarily needed for steps and stuff, but maybe for things like setting up that rhythm on the echo, right? Or something like that that creates those cool time bends and whatnot. The next thing that I think would be interesting is just having more generative options. I think that the list that we have already is nice, but within this, you don't have much say over this stuff here of how long each step is going to be, because right now I think this is an average, so this will be like from here to here. Actually, that's exactly what I was looking for, so I take that one back. But maybe perhaps the offset or the micro timing, maybe, you know, having other options that are available like humanize and groove and swing or something of the sort to be able to kind of place this in, because it'll already do it for you. It's just something that, you know, and that's just one example, but more generative options, perhaps a chord generator, right? That will create multiple chord patterns for you, to which there is something that's kind of like that, but it has to be one or the other. And so what I mean is on the density here, you can see poly 2, poly 3, but if I hit generate on this, then now everything pretty much is going to be in chords. And so it feels kind of like one or the other, and it would be nice to blend in between that. And I think that it's more of just a means of fine-tuning this a little bit more than needing a completely new generator or whatever. But even still, I think that this is pretty great and it's definitely usable. But other ways to come up with randomly generated stuff can always be a useful tool, especially for somebody like me, because what I do is I'll find something that seems interesting and then I'll build off of the idea and start to variate it and do that. I'm a very reactive, creative person. There's only a few more things that I want to cover, but I'll try to blow through this. But groove profiles would be great. Let's say I make a cool sequence here. You see how this stuff is offset. I can just save that as a groove and then try to apply it to the, you know, swing effect perhaps within this and be like, yeah, let's toss it on that. Maybe I hit second and then that pops up to where I can input the groove pool. I could see that working out pretty well. The humanization of the Euclidean sequencer would also be kind of nice. I've already mentioned that. I don't feel the need to mention that again. You do have to, like, you can kind of do it, but you have to do this, and then you have to do, excuse me, the swing effect. And kind of more so what I'm saying is a per step. You know, maybe on step 1, you can just move it off. Step 2, you can just move it off. It's kind of like an arpeggiator thing that I've talked about with other companies of, instead of it, everything having a global swing, global humanize, like just let me have a per step offset thing. I know that's my big thing. To which the last 2 things that I want to discuss are a step input mode, 3 things, sorry. So let's say I play something killer on this, right? Yeah, totally great. Something that would be nice is, for one, if I hit second and record or something to have retrospective recording. I'm pretty sure that's not in here. If it is, then I would freak out. But that would be great. The other thing is step input. So if I'm holding record or something and I play a line, or, you know, one of the two, it doesn't have to be both, but the step inputs where if I hit something, it'll paste it within the timeline of wherever the playhead is to where I can actually record that. And that way it actually helps me bridge the gap between playing live and actually just inputting the steps. You can kind of do something like that if you just hit record, because there is quantization on here with the recording. But even still, I think that the step mode would be pretty useful and pretty interesting. And finally, one more effect that I could see being super useful is a strum effect. So as opposed to, you know, the poly or the ARP and those other things, it would be cool if it was just a one note thing where it just goes, you know, something like that. Or whatever. And the reason why is because I think that changing the way that some of this can be played outside of just being a piano or something of the sort could be super useful for people that maybe come from a guitar background. And these are kind of tools that I use within Bitwig and so forth. But these are all like just improvements and ideas. They're not, I'm not saying that these need to be in here other than the time division thing. I'm like, that should be here. But they're just enhancements that I could see them improving on in the future. And honestly, because they update this thing fairly often, I wouldn't be surprised if I saw some of these included in here. And yeah, even still, I've said that a few times already, I apologize. This has so much to offer, especially if you've never used a sequencer before. I think that having the prior knowledge of the Oxy one, it helped me figure out where to go on this. But even still, I said it again. I'm sorry. With that in mind, there's still so much that this has to offer that will keep you busy for a really long time. And between the experiences that I've had of all three sequencers, the outcomes, while it is different harmonies and different melodies and stuff, it doesn't change the amount of fun and the amount of engagement and the amount of exploring that I'm doing whenever I'm working with it. It's pretty much like the difference between having a steel string guitar and having a nylon guitar, if I had to compare them all. They all kind of pretty much do the same thing, but some of them just have a different charm or a different accent or a different profile that makes them stand out from one or the other, or have you not. So in the future, we will be talking about the comparisons now that I've gotten the review out of the way, but I'm curious as to what you all think. For those of you who have a Hapax, sorry, Doggo is coming in and interrupting me. Was this worth it to you? And for those of you who are looking into the Hapax, are you waiting for that review to where you want to buy one, but you don't know? And again, I'm not here to sway you. I'm just here to kind of talk about all the things that this can do and basically blabber. But thank you again to Squarp Instruments for sending this to me. I'm also curious to have their feedback based off of the review and my suggestions, and really just kind of have a celebration and discussion over a cool piece of gear that, you know, found its way into my studio, thankfully. Anyways, thank you so much. If you all want to support the channel, alckemy.com, even just liking the video and leaving a comment can be extremely helpful to me. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.